Hello, everyone, and welcome to our ceremony to honor the winners of the Don Rothman Endowed Award in Student Writing. I'm Amy Vidali, Associate Teaching Professor and Acting Chair of the Writing Program. The Don Rothman Awards Committee is composed of faculty in the Writing Program, and serving on the Awards Committee is competitive. Lots of faculty want to read this great student work. They have selected a first place winner, a second place winner, a third, and an honorable mention. Today we're going to hear from all the winners and from their instructors. Don Rothman is remembered in part for heading up the Central California Writing Project while here at UCSC, and one of Don's many tributes notes that at summer institutes hosted by the Writing Project, teachers gathered with, quote, education activists to think imaginatively and courageously about how to teach writing to change the world, end quote. The writing we are honoring today does this work of changing the world, but so is this writing about continuing to write in a changing world. All of the winning student essays we honor today were produced in 2020 and 2021. These students did not succeed despite COVID, but within it, and their work enriches our understanding of ourselves during a particular moment in the history of UCSC and of our world. I am grateful for these students' work, and given my own struggles to produce writing during the pandemic, I marvel at these students' clear successes in putting words to page. Thanks so much for coming today, and on with the show. I hand it over to our MC, Mark Baker.
Hello, I'm Mark Baker, a writing program faculty member, and I also served as committee member and chair of this year's Rothman Committee. It was a privilege to work alongside committee colleagues as we read and thought through this year's Rothman submissions. Joy Hagan served as co-chair of the committee, along with committee members Robin King, Ingrid LaRiviere, Bridge Lunine, Ellen Newberry, Sarah Hope Parmeter, and Nersham Pereira. Don Rothman was a longtime faculty member in the writing program and Oaks College, I'd like to add. Upon his retirement from the university in 2007, Don, along with his wife Diana, established this award. And I'll quote from the award website: to honor the achievements of one or more first-year students in the genre of nonfiction, academic, analytic writing, and to recognize excellence in writing pedagogy. This year marks the 12th annual Rothman Award celebration. The award acknowledges 4 student writers, an honorable mention, third place, second place, and first place, and today we'll hear from each of them. We're excited to celebrate their work and their achievements. So just a bit about the process. First-year students are invited to submit papers to be considered for Rothman recognition by a June deadline, and the committee begins its work shortly thereafter, working through the summer months. Committee members read, reread, and re-engage in spirited conversation over the submissions. The committee takes a series of votes, share ideas as we deliberate back and forth, and ultimately arrive at award finalists. The writing that students submit foremost speaks to the range of issues, topics, concerns, and questions about which students are grappling in their academic and personal lives, heightened certainly by changes and challenges within the larger society. The writing itself reminds us of the different ways and approaches by which student writers enter into these conversations, the way they bring knowledge, observation, and experience, along with critical analysis, to the ideas they contemplate and examine. Our work as teachers of writing is to provide the space not for students to memorize and repeat these conversations, but to engage them with their visions, perspectives, ideas, and hopes. The work we're recognizing and honoring today shows the depth of research and thinking that our students do here at the university. And so this brings us back to what we're here for today, honoring these students, honoring their writing, honoring their experiences that have shaped what they know, how they think, what they have brought to their writing. We'll introduce them in just a bit, but first, it's also an honor for me to introduce the Dean of Humanities here at UC Santa Cruz, Jasmine Alinder.
I'm honored to welcome you all to the virtual ceremony for the 12th annual Don Rothman Endowed Award in First Year Writing. I'm grateful for your presence. I want to thank Mark Baker, the Rothman Committee Chair, and the amazing faculty and staff of the writing program. I have to tell you that having the caliber of the writing program that we have at UCSC is incredibly special. This event brings together a vibrant community, which includes current Rothman Award recipients and their instructors, friends and family of award recipients, writing instructors, and Rothman Endowment donors. On behalf of the Humanities Division, thank you all for what you've contributed to make this event possible. Congratulations to all of the writers we are celebrating today, and congratulations to the award winner, selected from 55 submissions after careful review from the Don Rothman Awards Committee. It's an honor for me to talk with you about writing, but I have to tell you that I've never thought of myself as a writer and certainly never described myself as a writer. If you look at my CV, however, this might cause some confusion, as you would see that I've published books, contributed essays to exhibition catalogs, edited volumes, written journal articles, and blogs. In fact, I've written and published a fair amount. So how can I explain the disconnect between my self-perception and my scholarly activity? I'm a historian of photography, and this disconnect reminds me of a question I often ask my students at the beginning of a history of photography class. I ask everyone, and I'll ask you now, how many of you are photographers? Typically, very few students raise their hands, but then I rephrase the question. I ask, how many of you take pictures? Every hand goes up. So my students make a distinction between everyday amateur, we might say vernacular practice, and professional practice. Professional practice assumes training, maybe a degree or work experience, more than a hobby. So we're all picture takers, but we don't all consider ourselves photographers. And in a similar way, I author books and articles, but don't think of myself as a writer. That title I reserve for novelists, poets, journalists, people who have trained in the art of writing. But should that be the case? When I reflect back on my scholarly training, I can't say I was ever explicitly taught to write. Sadly, I didn't have the well thought out ALC of our writing program here. And yet every course I took in the humanities and social sciences demanded that I produce writing as course assignments. If good writing wasn't explicitly taught, it certainly was expected. I'm somewhat ashamed to admit that in college, I used to estimate the amount of time it would take me to write a paper based on the number of pages that the assignment required. A 10-page paper, for example, would take 10 hours, 1 hour per page. I'm sure none of you do that. It was later when I became a master's student, a graduate student, and was required to produce a thesis and then a dissertation that I first became introduced to my writerly self. And it was pretty ugly. Many days I wished we had never met. During the process of writing my dissertation in particular, I spent many Monday mornings on my futon, crying in despair, overwhelmed by the enormity of the task to write a book-length study. One look at a blank computer screen with the words chapter 1 typed at the top and nothing else was enough to throw me into a panic. A blank screen felt like an unfillable void, an intellectual abyss. I stopped thinking about page numbers in terms of hours, and I had to rethink my approach to writing. Perhaps Mondays were not the best day to start with a new blank computer screen. Maybe I needed to learn some techniques like free writing in order to release myself from constraint. And I had to create a writing schedule that accommodated my own rhythms, insecurities, and quirks. I had to look outside of my discipline for guidance. I picked up a copy of Ishmael Reed's Writing is Fighting. I tried to learn about voice and still go back to food critic Jonathan Gold for inspiration. More recently, as I continue with my scholarly writing, I've learned to deploy my writing skills to other forms. As a public historian, I work on projects that are not just public-facing, but that leverage what's called shared authority, the idea that public history is created at the intersection between public and academic expertise. Writing continues to be the way I communicate who I am as a scholar, a parent, an advocate, an educator. Am I ready to call myself a writer? Frankly, no, but I will take inspiration from all of you award-winning writers today. Congratulations.
It's my pleasure to introduce writing program faculty member Tiffany Wong, who will introduce her former student, Dante Bull, whose paper, Ethics in Design and Adulterous Matrimony, earned honorable mention in this year's Rothman Award.
Hello, I'm writing instructor Tiffany Lynn Wong, here to introduce my student Dante Bull's award-winning essay, Ethics in Design and Adulterous Matrimony. In the essay, Dante has the audacity to inquire what constitutes ethical design. He begins by evaluating the planned obsolescence of a cheap computer printer, which serves as a humorous allegory for how design can become stagnantly unethical under the conditions of malfunctioning capitalism. Dante's insightful analysis continues to describe how design, although often elusive, shapes our lives through episystemic law and policy. Dante includes examples of unethical design from our socially and racially biased criminal justice system to the MBAization of corporate America. To quote Dante from his essay, redesigning the world to become more ethical must then be a unitary effort. Each person has to uphold ethical standards and practices as part of their civic responsibility. Since ethical decision-making, he quotes Selinger, is a muscle that needs to be exercised, lest it atrophy. The essay concludes that if we know systems have been unjustly designed, that it's our duty as democratic citizens to redesign them more ethically with compassion. Dante, it was wonderful having you as my student. Congratulations on this honorary award and on your magnificent essay.
Hello everyone, I'm Dante. I'd like to begin by saying that I'm honored to be even considered as a runner-up in this writing award, seeing that when I wrote my essay I had no idea this award even existed. So my essay is called Ethics in Design and Adulterous Matrimony, and I wrote it in response to an ethics prompt from my Writing 1 class in the winter of 2021. And let's see. What's kind of odd about this paper is I wrote it very much in spite of the university and school, and because I kind of felt abandoned by them at the time, and I still do. Like, we're all going back online again, so it's a very difficult time for any student, really. But so I was kind of motivated to find sources outside of school resources, like outside of the library database. I went on Medium, which is a really interesting academic kind of like blog area. Where people do a lot of academic writing on there, and a lot of podcasts and stuff like that. And that's kind of where I found a lot of my sources. What kind of really inspired this, though, was how easily our society could, and like a lot of the world governments could fall apart just because of one virus. It felt like everyone was very ill-equipped to handle the lockdown, or even just to strategize ways to fight a virus. So when picking a topic about ethics, I picked design, the ethics of design, because I felt like the way so many things in our society are designed are really bad, or at least they have consequences which can be easily, maybe not easily, but consequences that can be avoided. Let's see. So I think with that, I'm going to read you the 5th paragraph of my essay, which talks about how design and an individual's agency are intertwined, which is really important, and it sheds light on how both design constrains us and enables us at precisely the same time. And yeah, I hope you enjoy. The full influence of poor design can be much more severe than hindering one's socioeconomic growth. Design inherently conditions people. It defines the ways in which we think and behave, shapes how we define ourselves, and limits our creativity. It is the box which we are trying to escape. The consequence of this is that design can be used to erode a person's agency. In a research paper published by the Benjamin Cardozo School of Law, Brett Frischman examines how digital contracting, while designed for efficiency and ease of access, is often harmful, as it conditions people to automatically accept contracts which may or may not be in their favor. Frischman's analysis revealed that the problem stems from choice architects, which, in light of making a website more usable, often disregards the importance of critical decision-making. A potent manifestation of this is the terms and conditions which many websites rely on. Outside of the digital realm, contracts are often extensive, arduous readings, which are mostly incomprehensible. By streamlining the process, choice architects limit the agency of the user. As Frischman describes it, freedom of contract requires a correlative freedom from contract. When contract becomes automatic and ubiquitous, both disappear. There is no freedom. Frischman was discussing the design of contracting, but this is unanimous for all design. Each designer is a choice architect in their respective field. By creating a design, one creates a choice, but often that choice feeds back into the design itself and can rarely escape from it. To escape from a design, one must leave its system, for example, seceding and forming a more perfect union. This ideology is heavily explored in the Matrix trilogy. The entire world of the Matrix is a design where choice, or rather the illusion of choice, is used to enslave the entirety of humanity. This is accomplished by removing the choice to leave the Matrix and systems of control. Instead, people simply believe all they can do is choose what they do inside of the Matrix. It can be said then that design can be used to shape the way entire civilizations act or behave, and thus design should never be taken for granted or immediately accepted. And like I said, I'm not sure if this is going to be posted somewhere in my essay, but if it is, I highly encourage you to read it. And yeah, I think it's very interesting and talks about a lot of interesting context about how design is connected to the way we think, and yeah, it shapes our lives, So again, thank you. I hope you enjoyed, and have a great day.
Hi again. I'd like to introduce writing program faculty member Maggie Amos, who will introduce her former student, Alexandra Singer, whose paper, Two Illustrations, One America, earned third place for this year's Rothman Award.
Hello, I'm Maggie Amos, and I have the pleasure of introducing Alexandra Singer, who wrote the third place winning essay in our writing two on the New Yorker magazine in the spring of 2021, Two Illustrations, One America. It's a pleasure to read this companionable and richly considered look at two New Yorker covers as Alexandra reflects on a central problem with our American democracy. Her analysis unfolds so surely, flows so confidently, always attentive to questions of justice, liberty, and memory. And I just want to say congratulations, Alexandra, on your excellent work.
My name is Alexandra Singer. My essay is about a visual analysis and comparison of two New Yorker covers. Ian Falconer's 1996 Independence Day Special Liberation and Bob Stockay's 2008 Reflection, made in recognition of Barack Obama's historical presidential win. More specifically, examining these two covers helped me contrast and reconcile the notions of America as oppressed and an oppressor. I'm no expert on U.S. history or African American studies, but I felt compelled to write about American independence and the struggle of Black Americans as they relate to each other because of my desire to understand social justice issues. Though I see learning about social injustice as a step towards my ultimate goal to create emancipatory action, my essay reflects my own attempts to learn about American history and American oppression alongside my audience through the comparison of these covers. Before writing this piece, for example, I had no idea that the United States officially became a country on July 2nd of 1776, nor did I know that the Statue of Liberty was originally supposed to symbolize the abolition of U.S. slavery. At the same time, I drew from the small amount of knowledge I've gained taking ethnic studies, majoring in politics, and by just getting older and realizing how terribly this country treats the very minorities it depends on. From a writing standpoint, I applied the writing techniques and practice I had gained in my Writing 2 class to this final project, as well as the passion that my high school writing teacher, Mr. Hereford, had always inspired in his classes. With that said, I hope my essay, or even the chosen sample of my piece, compels you to consider how we, as people living in the United States, can recognize or even honor the country's important founding principles, while understanding that the U.S. could not be as dynamic as it is today without its minorities for whom there is more social justice work to be done. In this way, for me, the 4th of July also calls on to celebrate the minority communities in this country who have helped make the United States so special. Finally, I want to thank my Writing 2 instructor, Maggie, for encouraging and constantly engaging our class with our material. I could not have written this without her guidance. With that, I'll now read the last two paragraphs of my essay titled Two Illustrations, One America. Indeed, even after American independence, after emancipation, after the 13th Amendment, the Statue of Liberty, the Lincoln Memorial, the Civil Rights Movement, Black oppression endures. With the race-related implication of Falconer and Stockay's covers in mind then, perhaps we should most importantly understand liberation and reflection not as competing narratives of U.S. history, but as two sides of the same coin. preferably a penny. Earlier I said that compelling visual art effectively portrays ideas solely by image, especially difficult ideas. Well, through their architectural iconographies, calls to history, and visual juxtapositions, liberation and reflection surely compel. And despite their contrast in attitude and message, the covers offer some sense of reconciliation between their conceptual dissonance. If I haven't convinced you now, then maybe one final visual analysis might. Note how both pieces draw attention to their subjects as sources of light, and how the sparkler in Falconer's work lights up the sky while the O in Stocke's cover does too. Though Stocke's duly symbolic O expresses itself as the moon and O in Obama, like Falconer's illustration, it also calls for the appreciation of U.S. history, albeit in a more nuanced way. Where liberation, through its flashiness and visual directness, simply celebrates America as an unwavering guidepost of freedom, reflection reminds us that Obama's 2008 history-making victory may point us towards a future where the centuries-long enslavement of Black lives no longer means ongoing injustice towards Black Americans, but only if we recognize and act to remedy the fact of America's contradictory founding. Thank you.
I'm happy to introduce writing program faculty member Erica Hulk, who will introduce her former student Amalia Boschin, whose paper, Caught in the In-Betweens, the tension and relationships between corporations, the Republican Party, and social issues in America, placed second for this year's Rothman Award.
Hi, my name is Erica Hulk, and I'm a faculty member here on the writing program at UC Santa Cruz. I'm happy to be here with you today to introduce and celebrate my former Writing 2 student, Amalia Boschin, and her long-form journalistic piece titled Caught in the In-Betweens, the tensions and relationships between corporations, the Republican Party, and social issues in America. This piece is the final installment in a quarter-long sequence of 4 projects through which students researched viral stories that piqued their interests, unpacking them in layers over the span of 10 weeks. Amalia's paper represents a remixing of an academic genre, the literature review, into a public one, the magazine article. Amalia thrived at each stage of her research journey. She chose the controversial Georgia voting reform law, which received condemnation from major corporations like Delta and Coca-Cola to springboard her investigation. She was then driven by a genuine interest to wrestle with the dissonances framing her story, especially her own disillusionment with politics and the social stands corporations take, which often read like publicity stunts. Her exploratory mindset is notably evidenced in her article. From the outset, she invites her audience in, engaging them with narrative and reflection. She propels the article forward with rich questions, which are woven throughout, like road signs guiding her readers as they navigate not only the turns of her argument, but also the evolution of her thinking. As the piece progresses, she tests her own beliefs on politically infused corporate messaging, her stance becoming more nuanced, her claims complicated by the differing voices of her sources. What impressed me the most about her article, though, was how distinct it was from her literature review. She used the same sources and arrived at similar astute conclusions, but she did so via new rhetorical moves meant to engage a public audience, employing a voice that seamlessly integrated the intellectual with the personal. I'd like to congratulate Amalia for her impressive ability as a researcher and writer. It was truly a pleasure to observe her ambition in action and see what one can accomplish through risk-taking and curiosity. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Amalia Boschin. I'm a second-year double major in politics and legal studies. I'm so grateful to be here. Thank you so much to the writing program and the Don Rothman Endowment for this opportunity. I wrote this essay in the style of a long-form magazine article. I wrote it in the spring of my freshman year for my Writing 2 class with Professor Erica Hulk. I really enjoyed writing this essay. It spoke to me on a personal level and an intellectual level. I wrote it about events that happened in Atlanta, Georgia after corporations with large employment bases there responded to activist pressure to speak out against a law that the GOP-dominated legislature passed that rolled back voting rights. That was part of a larger response throughout the country to fraudulent claims that Trump made about the 2020 election. So this spoke to me personally because I have a really deep passion and interest in protecting and advocating for civil rights. And also intellectually, because of my majors, I was interested in diving deeper into the relationship between social issues, corporations, and politics, especially the GOP. So that's what I wrote this essay about. And here's an excerpt from the conclusion of that essay. So, are the events in Atlanta the sign of a budding age of corporate accountability in the wake of Donald Trump? Yes and no. The demand for public corporate statements on socio-political issues and subsequent corporate capitulation to that demand were definitely intensified by the current and past actions of the Trump-era GOP. With increasing political polarization, in the last 5 years especially, came a more consistent habit of the consumer citizen to support brands that reflected their values. Corporations that wouldn't take some kind of public stance, even just to announce neutrality, were and are no longer trusted. However, the tensions visible in the corporate political relationship are also not new. They are part of a growing pattern of strain over the last few decades. The events in Atlanta can therefore also be understood as part of a longer and broader trend of adaptation to an ever-changing market, even while acknowledging the surprising publicity of the corporate actions in Georgia. And what about those cynical views that I expressed at the beginning of this piece? I was able to gain more nuance and depth in my opinion, so I can now understand corporate social action as more than just a glittering PR trick. I can see it as part of a complicated and involving effort to balance the interests of the consumer citizen, the corporation itself, and the political entities it works with. However, I doubt the chance for significant change unless political regulatory practices and qualifiers for meaningful corporate action, social responsibility are radically restructured, with external, sustained collective pressure to achieve those ends. True social progress is not the job of the shiny, happy people, nor the grave and dignified actors in those corporate call to action ads. It is the work of a broader, more complicated us. I hope to see that us realized in my lifetime. Again, thank you so much to the writing program and the Don Rothman Award. I really appreciate this, and thank you so much for listening.
Next up, I'm pleased to introduce writing program faculty member Heather Shearer, whose former student, Chris Shade, placed first in this year's Rothman Award for the essay, A Short Guide to Setting Goals.
Hello, everyone. My name is Heather Shearer, and I'm an instructor here in the writing program at UCSC. It's my distinct pleasure to be here with you today to celebrate the legacy of Don Rothman and introduce Chris Shade, this year's first place winner of the Don Rothman Endowed Award in First Year Writing. Chris has many strengths as a thinker and writer, but chief among them are his willingness to experiment, take productive risks, and be persistent with revision. His creative thinking and discernment took this essay from its humble beginnings as free writing and reading responses through 2 separate short essay pieces for the class and many subsequent revisions, where it eventually assumed its final cohesive form as a reflective how-to guide illustrated with evocative images that help readers cultivate the inward-looking inventory he gently nudges us toward taking. This essay is timely, yet timeless. It was prompted, as all good writing is, by the kairotic moment that gave rise to it, but its significance will endure long beyond that moment because Chris's reflective observations and compassionate suggestions apply to life as we know it, as an ongoing stream of challenges and decision points that we face merely by being human. In short, his text is one that's well worth reading, and I hope you enjoy reading it as much as I did. When you do read it, know that he worked hard to bring it to you. I was witness to the time and care he put into it, and I know for certain that he did have you, the reader, in mind as he worked. So let me be the first to offer a round of applause to the gift that Chris has given us that is now part of UCSC's institutional history too. Here's to Chris and his winning essay, A Short Guide to Setting Goals.
Hello, this is Chris Shade, the author of A Short Guide to Setting Goals. I would like to thank everyone for coming, my family and friends for their pointers along the way, Dr. Shearer for her guidance, and of course Don Rothman for creating such a special opportunity. I worked on this essay for 5 months during the winter quarter of my freshman year, 2021. It began with a philosophy book by Joel J. Kupperman called 6 Myths About the Good Life, Thinking About What Has Value. Kupperman noted a few key points on the subject of desire, which I ended up focusing on because it struck a chord with me. It may sound silly, but I hadn't put much time into analyzing the meaning of what my desires were or where they came from. Thankfully, I was given a unique opportunity by my Writing 1 professor, Dr. Shearer, to analyze the good life in depth. We were given a choice to either start a new topic for the next assignment or to continue writing on Kupperman's book. I elected to push myself to write 2 separate essays on Kupperman. This required more than simply changing a few sentences or fixing grammar and MLA formatting. It required a significant re-seeing, as Dr. Shearer put it. I rewrote whole sections, added new sources, and changed the overall focus and scope of the essay. I eventually combined both essays into a single cohesive piece. Attending office hours gave me frequent feedback on how I was doing, which was crucial to get the help that I needed. I eventually added in an allegory centered around a backpacking trip to my original Yogurtland story. I'll be reading an excerpt from the backpacking section from my final article as I feel it best reveals the heart of this essay. Dr. Shearer taught me a lot of writing happens during the quieter moments of a day. I found that much of my downtime was occupied with thinking about the bigger questions I was trying to answer in my essay. A procrastinator by nature, I learned how important it is to give yourself ample opportunity to think over what you are trying to write. By the time I was done, I began to realize that this paper had taken on a life all its own. We spent a few more months working to revise the final essay until it became what I would call an article, angled towards helping the reader think about their goals. An integral part of this revision process involved finding creative ways of presenting this article, and that is when I decided to add my own photo from one of my backpacking trips, which is the first image the reader sees. I worked this image in Photoshop until I felt it captured the wonder I experienced while on the trail. My hope is that the reader will enjoy this essay as much as I enjoyed creating it. It is truly a labor of love for me. And now I'd like to share the excerpt. We desire what we think will make us happy, and we set goals to try and make those desires a reality. The difficult part for us is that we harbor attachments to our goals, and this makes us miserable when they don't work out the way we imagined. The goals we set are inevitably imperfect. To quote Kupperman, the more difficult something was, the more dissatisfactions there were along the way, the more fondly people look back on it. My childhood interest in backpacking would be a good example. On the spontaneity of a 10-year-old's whim, I decided to try it. So I signed up for a summer camp. Once on the trip, however, I realized how hard this goal really was. The trail was long, my feet hurt, and I was sweating profusely. The backpack felt heavier as the trail went on. Not another hill. Would it ever end? When we arrived at camp, there wasn't even a view of the ocean as I'd wistfully imagined. I was disappointed because this is not how I envisioned backpacking would be. Later that evening, we made our way down a small pathway to the beach. As I approached, bright lights sparkled and glittered where my feet sunk into the wet sand. The blue flashes were microbes in the water that would bioluminesce when disturbed. This unexpected, magical experience became the highlight of my trip. Since my expectations of the perfect backpacking trip did not pan out as anticipated, I ended up enjoying this mysterious moment all the more. But I didn't realize just how much that bioluminescent experience would pique my interest in biomolecular engineering until many years later. Had I not set an initial goal to go on a backpacking trip, I might never have experienced one of my favorite backpacking memories. It's quite possible our 10-year-old whims carry the potential to lead us to greater goals that might otherwise remain hidden from our awareness. Thank you.
Hello, These are the Rothman Award winners for 2020-2021. Honorable mention goes to Dante Boole for Ethics and Design and Adulterous Matrimony. Third place goes to Alexandra Singer for Two Illustrations, One America. Second place goes to Amalia Bostian for Caught in the In-Betweens, the tensions and relationships between corporations, the Republican Party, and social issues in America. And first place goes to Christopher Shade for A Short Guide to Setting Goals. Congratulations to each of you.
Nice work, everybody.
Yes, back again. I'd like to now introduce my longtime colleague and friend in the writing program, Senior Teaching Professor Elizabeth Abrams. Elizabeth will share a few thoughts on Don Rothman and the Rothman Award.
Greetings, award winners, and congratulations at winning this year's Don Rothman Endowed Award in First Year Writing. I'm Elizabeth Abrams, Senior Teaching Professor in the Writing Program and Provost at Merrill College. Don Rothman was my friend, my colleague, and my mentor. At his retirement, Don and his wife, Diana, provided a generous gift to seed funding for this award. After nearly 40 years teaching writing, it was an opportunity to make permanent and public his long-standing belief that first-year writing mattered. It was a gateway to a life in which writing matters. Let me tell you a little bit about Don Rothman. 1. Don carried a notebook and a pen almost all the time, and he wrote in that notebook often. 2. He was from Brooklyn originally, and although he left at about your age to go to college in Michigan, and left from there to go to California for graduate school, where he stayed until the end of his life, he never lost his Brooklyn accent, and he never lost his affectionate sense of home. 3. Don collected memorabilia about writing. For instance, a little figure sitting at a tiny typewriter, another little figure holding a quill pen. 4. Don had more people who considered him a mentor than anyone I've ever known. They included colleagues at Oaks College and the writing program, dozens, if not hundreds, of public school teachers who attended his annual Summer Institute, sponsored through the Central California Writing Project that he ran, and generations of first-year writing students at UC Santa Cruz, some of whom are now old enough to be your grandparents. Don began teaching writing while still a graduate student, and he was studying at the time, I believe, Renaissance revenge tragedies at UC Berkeley. He landed a job teaching at Laney College in Oakland, a community college serving mainly non-traditional students, many of whom were low-income people of color looking to achieve a college degree. That job launched a career devoted to the concept that writing is for everyone and that learning to write will change lives. Don wrote a line that he reused frequently and that colleagues and friends endlessly repeat. We write to avoid the humiliation of silence in the face of injustice. That's one reason he carried a notebook, to capture what needed writing for the moments when writing was needed. Because, as he learned at Laney College and as he taught generations of students at UC Santa Cruz, writing changes lives. Perhaps it has already changed yours. Congratulations again.
Thank you, Elizabeth, and thank you to Rothman committee members for your work this past year, to Tanner Woodgo and Amy Vidali, to Pam Edwards and Margaret Tam for their vision and tireless work in planning and organizing this event. And a big thank you to the students being recognized today for reading and participating, and to all of you who were able to attend this year's ceremony. Thank you very much.